My next guest tonight here on Punky's MixTape is joining me all the way from my old stomping grounds, coming from Allston, Massachusetts. I'd like everybody to welcome to the show, Tiberius. How we doing tonight?
Doing fantastic. How are you, Punky?
I'm doing great, doing great. It's always great to connect with somebody from my home of Boston. But for my mixtapers that may not be familiar with you, Brendan, aka Tiberius, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Brendan. I'm 24 years old. I grew up in Vermont and just moved to Boston a bit ago. And for the last few years, I've been making music under the name Tiberius, putting it on the internet, playing some shows. For people that don't know, there's some indie in there, there's some punk in there, some emo in there. There's a little bit of like some of that bedroom pop, lo-fi, jazz type thing that all the kids are listening to these days. It's a little all over the place, but it mostly has a lot to do with the feels and the bedroom computer thing. So that's me.
That I definitely understand, because I think one of the biggest things that I see right now is this like eclecticness in music, where artists like yourself, that are, independent solo producers, they're creating themselves without any real boundaries. Like, it's a bit of this and it's a bit of that, and it's influenced by this and it's influenced by that. And it's coming up with these unbelievable creations, which are nostalgic and new at the same time. And I think you really hit those notes quite well. There's something almost timeless about your sound, which is an unbelievable thing to be able to achieve at such a young age. So definitely kudos to you for that.
Well, thank you very much. I take that as a very high compliment.
Well, you definitely should, because what you've been able to achieve over the last few years is unbelievable. I personally really enjoy both the albums, but I got to say, you definitely really started to hit your stride with the new one. And we'll get to that a little bit more, but I gotta say, it really seems like you're coming into your own with the direction that you wanted to head on this new EP.
Oh, thanks so much. I do really appreciate it. It definitely has been a lot of fun to make, and I think, like, speaking to like sort of the limitless possibilities with a lot of these like new upcoming productions, in the last 5-10 years. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think the best part for me is that I've privileged to grow up in the time that I do, where I do feel like I have access to like pretty much the entire history of music, and also the individuals that are putting out some mind-blowing stuff. And so it feels like I can listen to a little bit from the past, and also in the same vein, just put on something that came out, last week. From anywhere around the globe, stuff my friends are making, stuff that's, I don't know, all over, I guess.
And that's the thing, is you're fortunate because you happen to live in one of the most musical cities in the entire world, and that's one thing that I love about Boston and I miss about home, was all the music variety. But you had said you had moved to the city right before the pandemic hit, so that your Boston is a very small version of the larger scale Boston at its max capacity, at its full greatness. What has that been like for you?
It's interesting, especially because I think a lot of the people I've met since moving here have all been like, oh man, like I remember I saw this show here, like, oh, I missed this, I missed that, and it all sounds like fantastic. And just like kind of one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to move here was I went to Skidmore College in upstate New York, Saratoga Springs, which is pretty enclosed to that area. And we had our little small campus music scene, and that was great. I played with a lot of great people, but it was like very limited to that. And so after school, I definitely wanted to come to a place with a lot more of a diverse scene, with a bunch of different influences being thrown around, and it was kind of like Boston was a big choice. Like I said, I was born here, and I had family around here, so it seemed pretty natural to move here. But yeah, it's been very interesting because I got to go through a handful of shows and just kind of start to experience that scene, and then it all kind of fell apart. And so I'm kind of, everyone is as people sort of mourn the loss of, or not the loss, but maybe the hiatus of something that's super immaculate and great. I'm also just kind of like, this is all I know. So I guess I'm hoping that when, you know, things hopefully come back, it'll just kind of be like it's only going to go up from there. So I'm looking forward to that. But that being said, already being here and just being in the area through meeting people online and just trying to read and trying to engage in some of like the local publications and people and creators, I've been able to sort of talk to and get connected with a lot of really interesting stuff coming out of, you know, also Brighton, Somerville, Dorchester. So it's been, and that part's been great.
Which is great, and that's one of the best things about that area is just like the diversity of musicians and artists of all varieties, from filmmakers to poets and writers, you know, to visual performers and dancers. I mean, there are every bit of the walk of life there in the city, and that's one of the things that I love about that area is there's some truly amazing people. And that's actually how I discovered you, was from a mutual friend of mine, also from Allston, and that's the boys in Tryhard.
God bless those individuals. I love Tryhard. I just found them through mutual friends, and they're immediately, I think I was like, I just loved how unapologetically themselves they were, and just their sort of like, I loved their the fusion of you know, chiptune and rap and violin or orchestrated type stuff, and I was like, I was hooked immediately. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I'm really into.
Before everything kind of came to it as you're moving to the city, you get a chance to play out as Tiberius out into the world and make your premiere.
Yeah. I've been doing I kind of was doing I would make stuff in my room on my computer, and as time went on, I started doing it again in high school and throughout college, and as time went on, the recordings got more elaborate, upgraded from doing like computer drums to real drums, and getting into like actually like producing and getting some. I was lucky enough to get some funding in college to do sort of an independent study in music production, which was great. I was able to get some real equipment, and not that you really need real equipment to be able to make that kind of stuff, because I do believe that like it's really the quality of the work that goes into it, not necessarily the equipment. But nevertheless,
you have access to some new tools you didn't have access to before.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I kind of got towards the end of school, my really good friend Noah Mendel, who also plays music, and we jammed it throughout college. You know, he's just like, you know, this was right after I put out the album, Depressing Optimism, and he's like, I'd really love to play these songs in like a live environment. And so and up until that point, I'd only recorded by myself and a few other individual collaborators. My friend Noah Tannen, who I grew up with in Rutland, actually did the drums for the first album, and a few other people lent like piano and sax and different parts. But that was the first time that I'd ever put together a band to play in front of people as Tiberius, which was crazy because I never heard those songs live before, really. You know, it was like, wow, this is crazy that someone's playing my parts. And we interpreted them a little bit because each one of the individuals that I played with, you know, had a little bit of different style. And so we kind of came together. They really became our songs. When we played them live, they were a little bit different than the recordings, which I thought was fantastic. And I got to do that a little bit, and I graduated from school, and we started playing more shows like in Boston, and and we did a show in Baltimore. We did some shows just kind of East Coast around, and then I did some stuff by myself. And then that's kind of when things got cut off, and I was hoping to to do some more collaborative recording for the album I just put out, Lull, but it just kind of happened that, you know, that wasn't an option anymore. So I did Lull again by myself. This time with the exception of the song Pale Ale, which our drummer Owen did play on, I, you know, pretty much had to do the drums and do everything, most things myself. There were a few collaborative parts again with some of those guys in the band, which is great. But it's weird. It does sort of feel like it's now a project that's not just me. It does involve a lot of people and a lot of collaborators. And although it still is, a lot of it still stems with me recording in my room and doing that, it's more of like a family, almost like an extended family of different people coming in and out. And now my manager Elijah and our other co-manager Ivy and my friend Kieran, who helps a lot with video and graphic design and helped out with the Pale Ale video, all have kind of come into this big sort of a family of different individuals that are, to me, members of Tiberius, which is it's crazy. It's great that I feel very loved, supported, and it's so nice to have collaborators on such different levels.
That's huge, you know, because when you sit there and you create something, and then when you bring it on to the next group of people to play with, you know, it really, you know, that's the thing that I love about any art is once you really let go and you let somebody else interpret it or, you know, critique it or anything like that, it takes a life of its own. You know, once you let go of the reins and you put it out into the public's eye, into the world, it literally takes a life of its own. So you get to see this really beautiful thing happen, especially when you start to collaborate with other artists and they were like, well, let me just get in here and add my colors to this. And then it just becomes this own unique thing. And like you said, it grows from, you know, the bedroom production into, at this point, a full band with a family where it has all these different moving parts and people coming in and out, just like a family does. And honestly, that in itself is an amazing accomplishment, even with everything and all the adversity that we're facing right now, is that you were able to find that unity throughout the collaboration and the writing process.
Yeah, it's been such a blessing, and I can't tell you, it definitely has affected the writing process too, because sometimes I'll be working on a track and I'm like, wow, I really love to have this crazy guitar solo here, or have a crazy guitar solo to work with, or like play it backwards or something. And like, you know, I can play guitar, I can't shred on the guitar, but my friend Noah can, and you know, my friend Kelvin can lay down a bass track or do like tapping math rock style guitar, like I don't know, like something that I just can't do. And it's so nice to be able to just be able to lean on friends to add their own in styles and taste. And it takes trust and time to be able to do it too. But it's so rewarding when it does come together.
And you're absolutely right. It does take a really big trust in order to let go, especially when it's as personalized as you're making it. You know, with like your first release, listening through it, A Depressing Optimism is incredibly self-revealing within itself, you know, and really says a lot about you as an individual, where I can even get that from you, that you're incredibly optimistic, you know, but at the same time that we all know that realism and optimism can often be depressing, and it's a balancing act. And I really think that the first EP really depicts that quite nicely. But as I was saying earlier, though, with Lull, it really seems like you hit your stride. However, it seems like you had more adversity to overcome, especially with the limitations of COVID, in order to get this record out. So, am I assuming that correctly?
Yeah, I think the first record when I was writing that, I was 20, and I was. It was kind of like I'd taken a couple philosophy classes and I was, you know, kind of struggling through, like, I think I was trying to do something that was like impressive and over the top and clever. And I think I tried to take the negative thoughts I had in my head and blow them up to a part that was sort of like it was kind of, it was a parody of myself at my worst times, I feel like, and it was a little ridiculous. And I think that I in a lot of ways it feels very much not representative of how I really am. And I think it came out, and I think there were some I think that there's a lot of revealing things about, you know, who I was at the time, but I also think that there's a lot of things that are a little bit more of a ridiculous version of who I was, or at least, you know, like kind of like the things that play in your head when like you're like really really stressed out or anxious and you're lying in bed and you're thinking about all of these different things. And so I think that during that time putting out that record, I think that I was trying to bite off a lot and more than I could chew. And I think that I put out something that feels very like it was like a very good, I think it was a good attempt at something, but I think that it didn't quite hit the mark that I wanted it to. And I think that I listened back to that record, and I think that I'm really proud of a lot of it, and then I have some moments where I feel embarrassed, but I think that I also would rather have been given it a really honest try and really just put it all out there rather than try to make something that was like that was flawless. And I think with Lull, I think that I was working with, I think I was, you know, more of those songs were written closer to the age that I am now. And I think that there were a lot of things that were refined. And I think that the sort of, I guess, trying to think of the right word, the framework that I was working with was a little bit more stable than Pressing Off. I was just trying to be simpler, trying to be more honest with myself about the person that I was and the challenges that I was trying to overcome. And I think in that way, trying to not be, you know, clever or tongue-in-cheek or ridiculous or make bold statements or anything like that, I think that I was actually made a much better record. I think I made something that was more personal, more relatable, and I was definitely happier with that. So despite having to put it out in the COVID era, it did feel like something that I felt like was easier for me to put out.
I gotta say, Lull is beautifully constructed. How long did it take you to put together the album?
That's well, first of all, thank you. That's definitely a hard question to answer. I think that I was writing songs as early as like the fall of 2018. There were some songs in there, and then I think that about half the songs came probably like in, I don't know. It was definitely interesting because I would write a song and I'd put it down and I'd say I'm not really ready to work on this anymore. I'd do it again, and I'd record demos and stuff like that. And there's a couple songs that are on the album that like right after I graduated school, I went to my parents' house for the summer, and I was able to assemble a drum set for the first time. It's the same drum set I used on the album, a bunch of different janky pieces, and I was like, basically the day that I had the kit, I'm like, all right, time to record. And I didn't even know how to play it yet. So I think some of the songs were like, I need to learn how to play this before I can actually put it together. So that being considered, I think like the bulk of the recording was probably done probably the beginning of like last year around this time to like September. And there was a lot that went in that, but probably all of the songs from that have been started or drafted at some point before then. And usually the way that would go would open up Logic on my computer, record some stuff. Maybe I'd get half done and be like, all right, I'm done with this for right now. And then go on and kind of let it marinate for a while. And then as a result, there's some recordings in there from 2018. And then there were some recordings in there like the day before I had to go send it to be mastered. So it's a
big cumulative process of the last couple of years. condensed, like, but that's awesome.
When I was working on the first album, I would get obsessed with like such little thing like drum sounds or something. And there was this one like little drum part, like it was like a snare part. It was like doo-doo-doo, and I like had looped it. So it's just basically a snare drum going, and I was looping that, and I was with some people, and then for like 20 minutes, all they were hearing was this one snare drum going. And then finally, like they're like, Brennan, what the fuck are you listening to? And it just was like kind of in the background. They didn't notice it, but then it clicked. This guy's listening to the same snare drum for like forever. But I definitely, you get into a trance and you can't get out.
Absolutely. And honestly, I chased that snare dragon as well. Let me tell you, she's a fickle bitch.
I have a band back where I grew up in Vermont, and with two of my best friends, Noah and Jordan, we grew up together. And first people I played with, like the quintessential high school band, will never have the same chemistry with anybody else, because we like learned our instruments together. And we're all living in different places. Jordan's in DC, Noah's in Philly, I'm in Boston. But when we come together and we play, it like that collaborative space, it's almost like a totally different mode of approaching creativity, because those guys just are, they know what's like Jordan, she's an incredible guitar player, just has this ear for coming up with interesting and creative riffs, and Noah is an incredible drummer. And I feel like a lot of the times I like have to kind of take a backseat role and let them do what they can do. And sometimes I feel like I'm almost more of like just like a vocal presence, or just being like, well, what if we did this, or what if we did that? But like I'm not necessarily on the forefront of the creative part. And sometimes I can be, but it's definitely kind of knowing your role. So it's interesting in that place too.
Well, I think that's a huge part of it, is like knowing when to let go, knowing your capabilities and limitations, Like you said, like you might not be able to shred, but somebody that can shred, or somebody that can do finger tapping really well, or this really, specific thing that that you want on this track. And then I think being able to admit the things that you can't, pull in what you can. I mean, that in itself right there shows massive amounts of growth and potential, because a lot of people are like, I can do it all. And for some they can, but not everybody can. Sometimes you listen to a solo project, you can hear the predominant instrument, and then you can hear what's lackluster on the side, but it takes a big person to admit the things that they can't do and have a willingness to allow somebody else to do that for them. I think that's huge, and that's one of the best parts of the collaboration process, is just kind of sit back and let go, know that they have it, they understand where you're heading with everything, and you fully trust them to deliver on your expectations, and even
sure.
Blow them away.
I couldn't agree more.
That's awesome. That's awesome to get to know you a little bit more of a story behind Tiberius. Now, one thing that I wanted to mention is that you've got this this fun little thing going with your merch, and I noticed that, and I even see it on now that your merch for your shirts is all your manager. Is that correct?
Well, I am wearing an Elijah t-shirt right now. That is correct.
There it is.
I am wearing an Elijah t-shirt. There is only one. I am the only one who has it. I think Elijah socks and Elijah line would be great. I don't know. That's something that I'll probably have to bring up with him. I think he and I we talk a lot about like social media and branding, and I think that I'm someone who, for a long time, very hesitant to be vocal about sharing my stuff and to ask people to listen. And I'm trying to find a way that I was kind of comfortable in advertising myself. And I think that I gravitate a lot towards humor and putting people's faces on different pictures and making memes and sending them to my friends. And they're dumb. They're really dumb. But I thought it just kind of started to be this running joke that I was putting Elijah's face or putting Elijah all over Tiberius stuff, and he didn't tell me to do that. He basically just like, yeah, Brendan's cyberbullying me on the internet, and you know, it just kind of became this way of like being comfortable to tell people about my music if I kind of had this joking aspect to it. You know, the music kind of serious. It's very like introspective and has a certain tone. But I'm actually a pretty jokey person. I like laughing a lot, and so it kind of like became this thing where I put Elijah's brand on things. So there is an Elijah shirt. I'm hoping maybe in the future I could convince Elijah to do a line of clothes if the people demand it. Otherwise,
I'm telling you, dude, I want an Elijah shirt. I saw that and I fucking died. And then I read like the little caption and stuff behind it, and I see all the little things and the postings that you've done, and I'm like, that's great. And then knowing the story behind it, man, I think that's even more endearing. Really excited to be able to share a couple of tracks in the video for Pale Ale tonight. Before we take a break and we check over everything with our lawyers, make sure that your doctor cleared you to play MixTape Malarkey. Where can we can find you on Instagram, but where else can we find your music online?
You can find it on Bandcamp and Spotify and Apple Music, where all the streaming sites are. The Bandcamp is Tiberius Wright, like Wright as in like WRIGHT, or like something name of like Mr. Wright sounds like a 90s comedy that you probably saw that was forgotten about. That's Tiberius Wright. .bandcamp, or if you look up Tiberius on Spotify or any of those places, there's like about like 6 or 7 hardcore bands named Tiberius, and if you get to the one where it sounds more like a whiny type of sound, that's probably me. But Tiberius Lull or a Depressing Optimism, you could find those, and Tiberius Wright is the Instagram. So, or if you just Google Tiberius Lull, probably something will come up. So,
we'll go down the rabbit hole. You'll find them eventually.
Eventually, you'll find me, and it probably actually I did try Googling Tiberius Lull the other day, just to see what would come up. And the first thing, it's a trailer for the album Lull, and the thumbnail is Elijah's face. Just smiling. So if you do that, you'll see them. So maybe it really should be the merch. Honestly, we're already halfway there.
Oh man, that's awesome. Well, mixtapers, we're gonna take a few moments, gonna listen to some tunes. Then we're gonna be back later on in the episode to run the gauntlet that is MixTape Malarkey. How you feeling about that? You excited, nervous, a little bit of both?
I am definitely excited. I am also pretty nervous. This is my first opportunity to do something like this, which means it's my first opportunity to screw up in front of an audience like this. But you know what? Even if I do, it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it. And I just got to say thank you so much again for having me on the show. It's a privilege and an honor. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And as far as your nerves about the game, just remember it's better to burn out than to fade away. All right, so if you going down, you're going down blazing hot, and it'll make history here on the mixtape. So
you know what, it'll be Punky's worst interview game. You know what, if it's the worst one, it probably will be like one of the most searched ones. So publicity, you know,
worst is first is worse. Oh goodness. Well, I am excited. Mixtapers, sit tight. We're gonna be back a little bit later in the episode with Tiberius.